We now will reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners for a policy session. Gary, would you please tee it up?
Yes, Chair, would you please convene as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District?
I will recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as the North Clackamas County Parks and Recreation District.
This is the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District Parks and Recreation Systems Plan Update. You have a staff report. This is a discussion for you to decide what to do next. Dominic, please come forward. So the presenters today are Dominic Cortines, who's the Deputy Director of the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. Cindy Becker is a project manager in county administration, and I've asked her to help me with the leadership of this department while there's a vacant director position. She'll support me and Dominic, but she's going to be involved in this as well. So Cindy Becker and Dominic, please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you. Good morning. Oh, it's almost afternoon, so nice to see you, Commissioners. The purpose of today's policy session is to review the System Development Plan contract and to seek direction from you in terms of approval of that contract. So in terms of background, the System Development Plan is something that is regularly done in Parks and Recreation. There was one done in 2007, and there was an update done in about 2014 and 15. And so the things have changed since that time, and so the NCPRD went out for an RFP to select a contractor to develop the plan. They received a variety of bids and selected the contract that you have in front of you, Design Workshop, I think it is, yes, to do the job. And so the plan would have a variety of phases in it. It would have, essentially, the first two phases are around, I guess they're called discovery, where they collect data. They would survey people on what their needs and desires are. They get the demographics of the district, and then once they collected all that data, they would then go into the planning piece. There'd be a lot of iterative work with the communities. They're also, the way they're collecting the data will be in terms of the unincorporated. There's 5 subdivisions. The data will be collected by subdivision. You'll be able to see the, for example, in the Milwaukee subdivision versus the data from the other subdivisions. So there'll be a lot of detail information as well as general direction. And then the intent is that the results of this planning effort will be brought obviously to the DAC and obviously brought to you for approval to move forward. The planning effort will inform a variety of activities of the district in terms of acquisitions, operations, maintenance, funding, what the priorities are. The important thing in this process will be a recognition of that the fact that resources aren't unlimited. And so we want to make sure that we don't get into situations that have happened in the past when we've invited the community to do all of this work and then at the end say, guess what, we don't have the money for it. So we want to make sure that we are also, as we communicate with the community, as we get the input from the community, we're also making sure that people are understanding what the resources are as we move forward to prioritize those. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. I'm sure we'll have a discussion. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I just want to point out that in the executive summary, and I think the way it's worded, it's not like, not suggesting that it was not, that it was omitted, but I think it's important, at least in going forward, that we're mindful of the last master plan that was done. Master plan, systems plan are interchangeable as I understand it. So if I say master plans, because that's my special district background for the last 20 plus years, we always refer to it as that either way. But the last one was done in finished complete around the 2014 period, and Happy Valley was a participant or a member of the district at the time. That is not mentioned in the executive summary, but I bring that up only to say that my reluctance without some kind of an agreement with the city of Milwaukee, my reluctance right now is that the cost of this is what, $358,000. I'm worried about that being a partially stranded or not completely stranded investment. What took place in 2014 was the plan was done. The city of Happy Valley had some issues with parts of it, some of that being SDC, as did Milwaukee, as I recall. And in the end, we were supposed to do an SDC study. That fell flat because I think there was some disagreement, and also the departure or the process of the departure of Happy Valley just bogged everything down it just brought everything to a halt. So it's important to be mindful that if we don't have some kind of agreements in place with the city, in this case Milwaukee, and they have been messaging for pretty strongly, it's not any secret that they have interest in withdrawing, and there's nothing that I've seen recently that would suggest otherwise. So I say this with respect. There's no ill intent here, but I would be more comfortable moving forward if I knew that Milwaukee would either split the cost with this or their portion of that, and there was some means of feeling really good about the participation. I want this to be amicable. I don't want, but if we're going to move forward together with the mindset that they are seeking to withdraw, that we are remunerated for that, because the district is not in strong financial condition, frankly. The revenues and the service levels that Milwaukee's requesting, we just don't have the money for. So I think it's important to be mindful of every dollar we have. And I want to move forward in an amicable way where we're all getting along and we're just transparent about it as much as we can be.
Thank you. Other comments? Commissioner Shaw.
Yes, good morning. On the contract for $358,000 with Design Workshop, was that arrived at a competitive bid, or how did you come to that number?
There was Commissioner, there was a competitive bid process that was conducted with the procurement.
Okay. And the next question is, when this study is done on the update of the system development plan, how will that affect the 2015 master plan? In other words, will that provide tools for updating the master plan, and how does that work?
Commissioner, yes, essentially it would take into account, and I think they've already in their response, they will review all relevant documentation. So they're not going to redo something that is fine, but they will update it as necessary, but that will be part of their planning process.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I have a question on your options on page 2. And then you have a recommendation to adopt option 1. Option 1, which we've discussed before, is that just a data collection?
No, option 1 is the whole contract. I think one of the things I would like to point out is there are phases in this contract. The initial phases are really around that review, the data collection, surveys, and then after those 2 phases, you go into the planning. And so there is a point after the first 2 phases, which would probably be completed in June, July, that the board could decide whether they want to go forward with planning for the whole district or just the unincorporated or just Milwaukee. So there is that point in the process.
Okay.
So what does phase 1 entail exactly?
Phase 1 entails reviewing of the information that has been collected to date. They were doing an inventory, reviewing existing conditions. They're going to be developing a community engagement plan, and they're going to be basically reviewing the whole layout of the plan over the next several months. And so it's collecting information and then having an iterative conversation with the DAC and then starting to plan what they're going to be doing with the community.
Okay.
Excuse me, and then phase 2 gets into the data collection and the surveying part.
So we don't get into data collection until phase 2. So if this, I'm not saying, commissioners, I'm not signaling that so if this was approved today, all the phases would be completed without you coming back to this board for approval for phase 2 or phase 3, correct?
Correct, Chair, unless the board put a condition on it that we have to come back for the second 2
Gary, what's your
phases.
recommendation?
Yeah, you need to put, I recommend you put conditions on this, because if you approve the contract, it's going. It will not come back to you again.
I would feel more comfortable putting conditions on this because I think Milwaukee needs to make a decision. Are they going to stay? Or are they going to leave? They need to make a decision on their own future. It's not up to us necessarily. However, I do think a data collection, at least involving the inventory and future costs, is very important. I'm not sure exactly if that all happens in Phase 1, but we could probably get some good information on that. So Commissioners, let's consider a modified motion as we move forward. I'm not sure who is next. Commissioner Scholl?
I just want to make, clarify that if we approve option 1, the work on Phase 1, data collection, and Phase 2 planning could proceed, culminating around June 2024. And then today, we need to add some, I recommend we add some verbiage that after the end of the planning phase, that you come back and we look at the issue of whether or not the Phase 3 will extend to the entire district or just the unincorporated part of the district, excluding the city of Milwaukee. Also, some of the other issues we have with litigation with the city of Milwaukee should be resolved way before that. That will make that decision easier. But that at least gives us a slot in there to look at, to stop and look at that issue after Phase 2 is completed.
So
Okay?
Commissioner Scholl, you're saying you'd look at a motion that included Phase 1 and Phase 2?
Phase 1 and Phase 2.
Okay.
With some sort of verbiage in there that will give us a pause after Phase 2 is completed to look at where we are with the city of Milwaukee before we decide on Phase 3.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Two other commissioners. Commissioner Savas?
So I have a couple ideas. I mean, I didn't come here, still struggling with this because of this unknown factor here. And I agree with your comments, Chair, about that. And I think it's really caused the district some, I won't say not misguided, but not having much guidance, not really knowing which direction to go with this. And this has been plaguing us for a long time, the district. So, I would immediately go forward if the proposal here was to just go forward with the master plan for the unincorporated only, but I don't want to leave Milwaukee out if they do want to stay, right? That's my instincts. I feel that they really want to leave, and so I don't want to make that any harder for them if they do want to leave, but we just need to get this settled. So I see a motion that could be that we could go forward with Phase 1 and come back after the 4 months and do that in a way that we have some time to work with the city of Milwaukee for an agreement, for a cost-sharing agreement between now and then, right? And I know I've heard that there's some reluctance to move forward altogether here today, and I share that. And I think if I had some certainty, I need an ounce of certainty, whether it's cost sharing or whether it is a decision to participate or not, and we do this with unincorporated only or with them both, but we need certainty. I don't think it's responsible to spend $358,000 without some guidance. I could go as far as Phase 1 a few months from now, but I can't go much farther than that.
I would tend to agree on the cost of this is quite tremendous. We have two other commissioners. Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, thank you for that. We have two interesting propositions in front of us, Phase 1 and Phase 2. Move ahead with it. Thank you, Commissioner Schell. And now you're saying, Commissioner Savas, you prefer just Phase 1 because of the uncertainty of what's happening with Milwaukee. I think I'm stating the obvious, but my question is, with doing two phases and actually give us more information on what's been going on, the dollars that have been flowing to Milwaukee versus the dollars that have been flowing to the unincorporated areas? And would that give more clarity about how that, for a better word, subsidy has worked? And would that help us clarify our long-term decision? Okay,
ahead,
thank
Cindy.
you.
So a couple of things. I wouldn't get hung up on the numbering the phases, essentially the first two phases are gathering information. So it's reviewing the data, surveying the community, and it's all it's input. And then the second half is really the planning, saying, okay, now that we have all this information, what do we do with it? And so we're suggesting that's where the cutoff would be. So you gather the information, phase one, phase two, and then we come back and to the board and say, okay, this is what we have. Hopefully, there would be some more information about Milwaukee, but then before we go forward with that, we come back to you to say, do you want to continue with the whole district or carve out unincorporated? In terms of Commissioner Schrader, I think I don't want to put all the operational stuff that we have to do anyway around the district into the plan. The questions that you have, we need to get you answers. Whether or not that's part of the plan is neither here nor there. We need to get you transparency on how the money's been spent, where the money's been spent, what the benefit has been. And so all of that may or may not be in the plan, but we need to get that to you anyway, and we will.
Thank you for that.
Answers and transparency is part of going ahead with at least a portion of this plan. Is that what you're telling us? Mm-hmm. Okay. Just point of clarification. Thank you. Commissioner West.
Ms. Becker, thank you so much for presenting this to us today, and Mr. Cardenas, thank you so much. This is about as clear as mud, and it doesn't really seem like a clear pathway. My default is that we're stewards of the NCPRD. Our responsibility is to that district as a whole, and we have some complications with the city of Milwaukee. I don't want to see a district that's already struggling, for lack of better words, be taken by an entity that wants to remove itself, most likely. And so my focus is to make sure that we do whatever we can to bring more stability, more strength, and a stronger outlook for everybody who needs to benefit from these parks. And it's not just the city of Milwaukee. And that, I think, is the lens at which I'm looking at this. Can you just clarify, maybe this question is way too simple, and I hope it maybe brings at least a little clarity for me, is will this data that we're collecting in these two phases, will it include really important information with Milwaukee included or not included? As I just read this last paragraph on the executive summary, to me, I wasn't clear, like, are we getting a full picture with or without or both with Milwaukee?
So the recommendation is that you get the picture of the whole district with Milwaukee, and then you make a decision about whether or not you want to move forward with in-depth planning for Milwaukee, but that you get the data, the surveys about the entire district, so you really know, that will help you make an informed decision on as to whether or not you want to go forward with the next phase for the entire district or not.
Yeah, when murky, we must have good data, right? When murky, we have to make informed decisions based on good data. So I also really think I don't want to gloss over a really important point that Commissioner Savas made, where if this involves the city of Milwaukee directly and the wrinkle they're putting to this, why aren't they cost sharing for this data also, which they would benefit from, with a district that's already trying to stay afloat? This is a big price tag. So have we spoken to the city of Milwaukee about splitting this with us, or at least them cost sharing?
Commissioner, no, we have not. The district is taking these dollars out of their funds for the entire district. So no, that hasn't been part of the conversation.
So in a way, they are paying for it.
In terms of their contribution to the district.
Fine.
Yes.
Yeah, but the district is not, I think, is at a loss if they do what everybody thinks they're going to do and is try to continue to be antithetical to the district and to chart their own path, which, sure, they can have their own autonomy to do that, but there really is an unfortunate cost to the district if that break happens. It gets a little murkier. Mm-hmm. And so, if they're creating this problem, if they're wanting to do this and break away, why wouldn't they cost share in that information and data?
Commissioner, I think you'd have to ask them, to be honest with you. I mean, this was initially approached as the whole district, and then this has been going on, this planning for this has been going on for some time. And so Milwaukee, things have evolved over time with Milwaukee, and that's, not for us to get into certainly, but it's just hasn't been part of the initial plan.
I'm going to just tell my colleagues I'm leaning on a no on this because I want Milwaukee to pay its fair share in creating this problem.
Okay.
And I have to make sure that I'm advocating for the NCPRD first.
Commissioner, if I may, I do want to say that the DAC is strongly, strongly in support of going forward with this plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have another comment, Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a comment and a couple comments, and I'm gonna make a motion. I'm gonna take a stab at this, try to thread the needle through what I'm hearing from you all. So first of all, Cindy, I think you mentioned in conversations with the consultant doing the work that if we went alone and we added Milwaukee later, or we divided this up, it could cost as much as $180,000 or for the Milwaukee piece.
If Milwaukee is done as a separate standalone piece, yes.
Right. So, which is about half of this cost. So I want to put that out there. The other part I want to put out there for members that are watching this or will watch this in the future, and that is that when we started this journey of the systems plan, we anticipated that we would have some closure on this effort, especially on this, how the withdrawal process and the legal challenge in court. The judge ruled as we thought they would be, and then it was appealed. And that appeal is a very, very late appeal, and then they extended the appeal. So that's it for an extension. So there's been nothing. There's been no closure, nothing even close to closure. Doesn't have even the appearance of closure. So I'm concerned that this could go on for another year or two. So I don't want to hold the district back. So, but I think it would be beneficial for both the city of Milwaukee and the district to do that information gathering and work together on some of that. So I'm going to take a stab at a motion.
Go ahead, Commissioner. I'm going to try to write it down and understand.
Okay. I move we go forward with the first phase of the systems plan work and allow time for the city of Milwaukee to participate in that financially in a cost sharing. I'll stop there.
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Savas has made a motion that we approve Phase 1 of the plan only and give the city of Milwaukee an opportunity to share the cost. Do you want to put a number on that cost?
No, I don't. I think that's for staff to figure out and the consultant to figure out what the fair cost is. I can't. I don't have any knowledge to do
Cindy?
that.
One thing I want to clarify, and this is going to be a little bit more confusing, so I apologize. The $180,000, it's not, that is if they were going to do a separate startup again just for Milwaukee.
Okay.
That shouldn't be applied to the 380 because the 350 because that's for the whole district and it's just kind of included in there. So it's not like the 180 is half of that.
Yeah.
That's just a separate contract. So in terms, yes.
And
All
if I-
right, just,
Yeah, if I can just add one thing, I mean, it is my, if I didn't, you need to word it differently, tell me, but my intention is to go forward with the master plan through the whole run, but it's just whether or not we're going to do the Milwaukee piece based on whether or not they want to participate financially.
okay, Commissioner West has seconded that motion. Now let's open it up for discussion. Scholl?
Commissioner Savas, help me out here. I don't quite understand why you would suggest that we allow Phase 1 to be completed instead of Phase 1 and Phase 2. During that period of time, the issue on whether or not Milwaukee will participate in the cost could be figured out just as easily as it could be if we just gave authority to do Phase 1.
Well, I think I'll expand on this, I'll respond, and that is that I think it'll give time for Milwaukee to, and staff to figure out what that cost sharing would look like. I think to do Phase 1, that's ample time. The alternative motion I had in mind, frankly, was to simply stall defer this until another month or two to have discussions with Milwaukee to see if they want to participate. So we could do, I could retract that motion and just get the negotiations or conversations started with staff and the consultant and Milwaukee to do a cost sharing as opposed to breaking it in phases.
Okay, let's have some more discussion before you retract your motion and/or consideration of something else. Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, the only reason I liked Phase 1 and Phase 2, because it gives us clarity about where the dollars are flowing. And that would give me certainty, indeed, because we've talked for a number of years that NCPRD unincorporated has been subsidizing the incorporated city piece of this, and I'm assuming both phases would give us clarity and certainty with that, and that would,
Yeah,
Well,
I'm
yeah.
sorry I broke it into those phases, that Phase 1 and Phase 2 should really be together. That is all of the input. That's the
Right,
data,
that's what I
that's the
thought.
survey,
Okay.
so they're really
All right.
together. That's before the actual planning. So that's why I just kind of smushed them
so
together.
what we're really talking about is the information to actually go forward with a plan, which would still give Milwaukee, well, it'll give us the information we need with both those pieces to say, to negotiate with them. So I don't see the benefit necessarily of breaking that up, but,
Okay, so
and that's okay if you disagree, no big deal.
I hear you. So Cindy, Phase 1 duration brings us to when, and Phase 2 duration brings us to when?
So Phase 1 is probably February, March, and then Phase 2 is probably around June. So you'll have all the information by June in terms of all the input in the surveys.
And again, I didn't mean to break them up into two. I just thought it'd be ample time for Milwaukee to make a decision or have a proposal. So it seems like if it's February, there's three months of discussions, at least a share and a cost sharing thing. I don't necessarily try to divide this up into 1 and 2. I apologize for that. I just thought it was
Oh,
a
okay.
timing standpoint.
Okay. I would like to make a comment. I have not opined on this yet. I think that the continued legal challenges from the city of Milwaukee could go on for years. And if we think we're going to sit around and wait for them to make a decision on what they want to do, we'll never get certainty with NCP, our district. And our park systems will not
Right.
be what the public expects. I would favor going ahead with Phases 1 and 2, going back to Milwaukee to negotiate, but let's face it, I don't have hope of negotiating anything with the city of Milwaukee. They have proven over the years, and even when I was a commissioner last time, that they think that they want what they want, regardless of the rest of the district. They are of the opinion that they have the largest amount of SDCs, and therefore, they should be the beneficiary of that. And for the record, for the whole world to know, when Milwaukee wants a new park in their city limits, they go make a new park and expects the other districts, the other parts of the district to pay for it at a SDCs, therefore draining the unincorporated parts of the district of their parks. And that's a big issue for me. They admitted that several months ago. So that's where I'm having trouble with this, is the equity piece that's not being applied equally. If Milwaukee has decided to remove themselves from the district, I do believe we need quantifiable data that this board has to make informed decisions, and we need transparency. And that's why I would support going forward with Phases 1 and 2. I believe, Commissioner Scholl, you're up next, and then Commissioner West.
Well, that's basically what I was going to say again, that it seems to me that based on your estimated timeline of completion of Phase 2, the needs assessment and system-wide analysis phase being around June of 2024, and looking at the current litigation issue we have, or the appeal we have with the city of Milwaukee, and the timetable that we think it might be resolved. I just, again, I like the idea of proceeding with and completing Phase 1 and Phase 2, and then taking a decision pause to look at where we're at, you know, what actually happened with the city of Milwaukee, and then we can decide how we're going to proceed with the planned development Phase 3. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner West?
Yeah, I'm really glad that we were talking about fairness here, because it just hasn't been fair to the unincorporated area, and that it's clear. And it hasn't been, the right word is equitable. And Milwaukee, the city of Milwaukee hasn't always played nice with the other people on the team that are trying to make a viable, strong Parks District. I was going to ask you, Commissioner's Office, if you wanted to make a slight amendment to that motion, now that it's kind of been ferreted out a little bit, and then I'd be willing to most likely change my second to go along with you if you had some thoughts.
Okay, yeah, that's exactly what I was going to do. So I'm going to move to, I'm going to amend my motion to go phase 1 and 2, but keep the language in there about seeking a cost-sharing agreement.
I will agree to that.
Okay, so Commissioner Sapphis has moved that we go ahead with phases 1 and 2, staff negotiate a cost-sharing agreement. Commissioner West has seconded the motion. Cindy, do you have a further comment?
I just have a question. We can certainly seek for the cost sharing, but if the other party says no, I guess I would ask for some direction. Then we would not include Milwaukee at all, or we would still go forward.
Okay, just a moment, please. Gary?
That's what I want to clarify as well. Phase 1 and 2, are we going forward only if there's a cost-sharing agreement? I'm not clear, Commissioners.
My intention was that we would go forward, when I made that was my intention, that we would go forward and use that time while we're going forward to get that cost-sharing agreement in place.
Okay.
Is that clear?
That
No,
is.
it's not clear to me, because I don't want to get down this path, Commissioner Savas. We get halfway down the path, we're presented with new information, and then all of a sudden, we want to take some action that we stop this going forward because we don't have whatever we think that we need from this. Phases 1 and 2 need to go forward regardless of any cost-sharing agreement. But Milwaukee needs to understand that their actions are costing this Parks District a lot of money, and the $358,000 is just a tip of the iceberg, okay? They need to understand that.
Chair, I think we're saying the same thing.
Okay, I want to make sure.
Yeah,
I
we're
wanna
saying
make
the same
sure.
thing. It is
I don't
going
wanna
forward.
I don't want to revisit this later. We have other commissioners in the queue. Paul, your light is on?
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay. Commissioner Scholl?
Yeah, I just wanted to say again that we, as one of the directors of the NCPRD board, we need to proceed unilaterally with a contract amount, even if Milwaukee decides not to help. Okay? That cannot be an issue for us proceeding to complete phases 1 and 2.
Commissioner West?
Well, if Milwaukee's listening, what do you think they're going to say? Right, like we just told them the outcome regardless of whether or not they cost share.
Well, actually, I think that cost sharing would be reflected in an adjustment for phase 3, right? Whether or not you include them in the planning piece. Am I understanding that correctly?
You can certainly when we come back to you after the first 2 phases, you can make that a condition of moving forward with Milwaukee. On the next phase is the cost sharing. So the first 2 phases are done, and then you can decide, all right, you want to go forward with phase 3, but you can decide whether or not you want Milwaukee to cost share in that phase.
So at the ends of phase 2, we can come back and have another discussion?
Right.
Well, yeah, it would seem to me that if I was, again, I'm trying to work in good faith, that if we're making a good faith effort to move forward, okay, then they would share in the cost for phase 1 and 2 as well. If they're working, I mean, that would seem to be a fairness. If they're getting the data and they're getting the information they want, then, and they benefit, that whatever that amount is, they ought to share in that cost, right? That's our good faith effort, Olive Branch out there, again, trying to be amicable, trying to work together, but we need clarity. This district cannot, we have struggled with this. Where I do agree with Milwaukee is this. I've known this for a long time. The millage rate, the tax rate is not adequate for the services and the parks and development that we need. That I agree with Milwaukee. So I don't know if we can ever get it high enough, frankly, and what that plan, what the district would look like at a certain amount. That's not a discussion for today, but all to say that that is a big issue, and I don't want the master plan to go forward or the system plan to go forward with some of these unknowns, frankly, because the cost for, if a calculation of a millage rate to do X and X and X is X with the city and it's X without it, that's a factor. No matter what, it's a factor. And that's a lot of work. And that work ought to be covered.
Well,
The cost ought to be
I
covered.
think that's a different discussion
It is a
outside
different-
of
it
this
is.
plan. And any adjustment in the millage rate needs to be approved by the voters. I can't imagine them approving higher taxes for a park during these very uncertain and difficult economic times. Just for a park. I mean, voters have approved fire, police, and maybe half of the school districts in Oregon. But this would be a tough sell, as we already saw that with the Hoodland Park situation. That failed resoundingly. Gary, is the motion clear?
It is, not as you made it, but as you explain it, yes.
Okay, I think we need to restate the motion. Can you do that for us?
Yes, here's what I'm hearing you say. Go forward on the System Development Plan, Phase 1 and 2, with cost sharing by the City of Milwaukee for Phase 3. That's what I'm hearing you say. Is that accurate?
I like that motion.
Well, my intention was, again, in good faith, that they would help with 1 and 2. But it's not contingent upon that to move forward today.
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes. Administrator Schmidt, I think there needs to be some wording in there that specifies at the end of Phase 2 that we have a decision pause to determine whether or not we proceed with Phase 3, with inclusive of the city of Milwaukee, or just for the unincorporated areas.
What was that again?
Yes, so Commissioner Shull is recommending a pause. So part of the motion, you're making a pause. So go forward with Phase 1 and 2 of the Systems Development Plan, and then come back to the board for further direction. At the same time, pursue a potential cost-sharing agreement with the city of Milwaukee.
Yes.
That'd be accurate.
For decision on Phase 3.
And is the second?
The second agrees to that.
Okay, all right. So are we clear on the motion?
I am.
Okay. And Tony, and yes, all right. Any further discussion before we take the poll on this? Seeing none, Tony, please take the poll.
Director Shull,
Aye.
Director Schrader,
Aye.
Director West,
Aye.
Director Savas,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, staff, for coming forward and with this very important discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. Gary, what's next?
That is all for this morning, Chair.
Thank you very much. We will adjourn today, and we will see you tomorrow.
And early.